The whole entire spirits industry, until very recently, was shrouded in legends. You know, nobody wanted to talk about what they did, and if they did, it was a secret recipe that was locked up in a vault because their great-great-great-grandfather wrote it back in the late 1800s, and you know, and they honor his recipes,
Legacy,
and they're keeping the yeast alive that that he worked so hard to make. And I don't mean this as a joke. I mean, this is, these are serious businesses. I mean, don't forget that the spirits industry and the wine industry, the whole alcohol business, is something that kids love to go into. You know, if your father was an accountant, you rebelled and you became a lawyer or a doctor, or something. But it's rare that your parents owned a business that you really wanted to be a part of. But not true in the alcohol industry. They get handed down from generation to generation because the kids really want to be a part of that. They're born into it. You have wineries that are seventh generation. Breweries. Spirits industries. So the fact that like somebody came up with the original recipe and really did his best to try to make that recipe as good as he possibly could, that translates nicely to the subsequent generations. And eventually they don't think, they just say, okay, this is the recipe that he had. So I'm not making fun of it, but the truth of the matter is that most of those recipes were written in the late 1800s, because it was in the 1800s that this still came out. This still has a rectification or a column unit in the middle that allows you to distill to 95% and even 96 and 96 and a half if you really want to push the pedal to the metal. Can't get higher than that, unless you denature the alcohol, which makes it poisonous. So we're not going to do that today. Right. It was kind of like all the big computer companies came out in the 70s, because that's when the chip technology allowed that to happen. So all the recipes, Bacardi and Johnny Walker and Jack Daniels and blah 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 blah, all those recipes were written in the late 1800s, and nothing was really done until probably around the year 1999 or 2000 that changed anything.
Why? What happened then?
The spirits industry basically fell asleep, and if you think about what happened, if you went to your friend's house or your parents' house, they all had the same 5 bottles of the same juice in their cabinet. They had one Seagram's, one this, one that. My mother tells me
Chivas, Crown Royal.
When she was growing up, they just called that Bronfman's. It's true. But nobody really did anything. What happened in around 1989, 2000 was the rise of the celebrity chef, and I don't want to go off on why there was a rise in a celebrity chef, but there was, and also Instagram. So what ended up happening is the chefs always wanted to have alcohol in the hands of the people who were who they were putting on Instagram, but they weren't going to put wine and beer in their hands because that's somebody else's product. But cocktails were legitimate. That was a legitimate expression for a celebrity chef to get involved in. So they went to the cocktail business, and what they did is they went back to the old cocktail books that had basically stopped being written at the time of Prohibition. And there's this whole library of these old, beautiful cocktail books. And listen, the guys who wrote those cocktails in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they were celebrities. Think about it. You got to go back and see the stuff that they did and the artwork that they brought to the books. Now, all of those cocktails, or most of those cocktails, were based on gin. Because vodka didn't exist in the West during the time of Prohibition. Vodka was only introduced to the West in the 40s and 50s, and pretty much only caught on in the 60s and 70s. So they were all gin recipes, and that's why you had in 2000 specifically this incredible rise in kind of like new gins, and that started what was called the Gin-Renaissance, or the Gin Renaissance. So that's all new. Before that, you had Beefeaters and Gordons.